lot of us, potential does not pay attention to your prayers. It actually distracts you.
There is a way that appears to be right, but in the end it leads to death. Times the bravest thing you'll ever do is leave. Times the bravest thing you'll ever
drain me. The truth, when you heal, the people who
Hey, y'all. Hey, welcome back to Truth, Trust, and Trajectory with your girl, Shaquem B, where healing meets transformation. You know what it is? Clock it. Before we get into today's episode, please make sure you guys follow me on all my socials at Shaquem B on Instagram and Threads at Shaquem B Life Coach. Make sure you guys like this, comment, and leave me a review. And make sure you guys visit my website, shakemb.com, where I offer free 1-hour discovery calls to any new clients. I have coaching sessions, healing workbooks, and trauma-informed resources to help you reset your mind and reclaim your peace. Now, let's get all the way into it. I want to talk about that season where God pulls you into isolation. And you know, that quiet, uncomfortable space where you start asking, why is everything and everyone falling away? It took me a long time to realize that sometimes isolation isn't punishment, it is actually preparation. So make sure y'all get ready because we're about to get all the way into this. So I want to rewind this time last year. Y'all see this smile? I didn't have it. Okay. I had just gone through a breakup. It was one that was extremely traumatic and it left me questioning my worth. And like a lot of us do, I tried to perform my healing. to an extent. I showed up on social media smiling. I posted my affirmations. I was doing my makeup. And inside of my head, I was telling myself, I'm good. I am healed. I'm happy. But deep down, I wasn't. During that time, I had started doing therapy again. And I thought that I was actually doing the work. I was doing my therapy, going to work, and just trying to focus on myself. At the same time, I decided to dump a lot of money into life coaching certifications. So, any life coach, anything, I pretty much was like, sign me up, I'm going for it. So, I created a whole new schedule for myself to kind of offset the pattern of having that person in my presence, pretty much pouring into myself. I also started my podcast this time last year to refocus. But then my breaking point happened when I lost my job. And that is when it hit me. My happiness was tied to everything else outside of me. It was tied to my relationships, my income, and my validation. When the distractions disappeared, hence my job, so did the illusion of my joy. And I realized looking back, that is the exact moment when God actually sat me down. And let me tell you, sitting with myself was the hardest thing I have ever had to do. Now, don't get me wrong, during that time, a lot of transformative things happened. Like I said, I started my podcast. I started my life coaching certification and journey. I actually took on several clients that I was very proud to work with to own in on my craft, right? But initially, when I started life coaching, I did it so that I can get down to the root of me and I can fix and heal me because I always knew that I had a greater purpose, but everything that you do externally always has to start within. And I think that is one of the hardest things, that season where you actually have to sit with yourself, right? So when I started realizing that, I had got my certification and I wasn't making any money and I was on unemployment. So I was barely covering my bills, able to feed myself. I really started panicking. So my happiness ultimately was tied to the things outside of myself. And I sunk down into this really deep place. Like I fell into a depression, not because I was ungrateful, because every day I woke up, I consistently tried to find a place of gratitude, whether it was, hey, my lights are still on, or I still have a roof over my head, or I'm able to still record this podcast, right? There was still something missing, like there was a void inside of me. And I hadn't gotten down to it until, almost a year later. When you finally get quiet, the noise in your head literally gets loud. And that is what happened to me during this time, this season, right? Everything that I thought that I had together and all the happiness and joy that I thought that I had, I very soon realized that it was an illusion. It was fake. It was a figment of my own imagination. So I want to talk about the truth of isolation. When I think and talk about isolation, I don't mean the cute kind where you take the weekend off social media and call it self care. I mean the kind where God literally strips everything that you thought you needed. That's the job, the relationship, all the distractions, and it literally leaves you face to face with yourself. Last year, that was me. After my relationship, I think I gave myself about 3 months, right? And then I started dating. I met this man. And I honestly at the time I thought that he was an answer to the prayers that I had been asking for, right? So all the things that I had asked my ex to do, he literally showed up and did it so effortlessly, so seamlessly, right? And I remember feeling like this feeling of uncertainty, like he's not really safe. And I couldn't put my finger on it. I just chalked it up to, I just went through this 2-year traumatic experience and I don't want to rush into anything without doing the actual work, right? He literally came in with this energy that felt to me like warmth at the time. It felt comforting. And he gave me attention that I haven't felt in years. Like I haven't experienced that level of attention. I've never experienced it. And it was literally like someone finally saw me. Like our conversations initially felt so connected. It felt like I was able to be myself around him and I was able to joke with him. Like we laughed. It felt like a genuine friendship vibe. He made me feel seen. Like he really understood me. He would watch my podcast episodes and we would talk about it and he would give me his perception and I would give him, we were able to have those levels of dialogue. And I think at that time, he was able to say all the right things. So to an extent, he made me feel protected. He made me feel chosen and he also made me feel needed. But that is where the but comes in because remember I said I had a moment of like hesitation where it felt like a trap and I couldn't put my finger on it. It was actually love bombing. That's exactly what that looks like. It's when someone comes in and they overwhelm you with affection, attention, and words of affirmation so intensely that your nervous system starts to believe that they are safety itself. It's literally intoxicating and it's addicting. The way that he made me feel because it wasn't love, it was familiar. The highs felt like validation and the lows felt like home. And for me and anybody else out there listening, right, this can be potentially a very dangerous thing when your home always has been chaos. Looking back, God showed me who he was in the very beginning. I just ignored the red flags and I ignored them because I was afraid of sitting by myself. I was afraid of being alone, right? And it was uncomfortable. And something about his presence brought a level of safety and comfort, something familiar, right? It was different because he was so skilled at love bombing and it was very hard to detect to an extent. And I wanted to believe that this was my redemption story, my finally, right? But deep down, I knew that he was never my person. But still, I kept performing peace. I post my smiles and convinced myself that I was healing when I really was just avoiding silence. Because for me, silence meant facing the truth. And the truth was, I was lonely long before he left. But when he pulled away, it wasn't just heartbreak that I felt. It was withdrawal. Because love bombing lights up the same areas of the brain as addiction does. And I talk about this in my last episode. Make sure you guys go and visit No More Miss Nice Girl. Okay. That brain addiction is when dopamine spikes and oxytocin floods in. And when it's suddenly gone, your brain literally screams for the next fix. This is why you can keep inviting someone back into your space that you know that is not good for you. You can see the red flags and spot out the cycle and you can detect it from the beginning, but you ignore those things, right? Because the overwhelm of these chemicals is stronger than your discipline to actually listen to yourself. So with him, I did what most of us do. I tried to fill the void. I posted more, I worked more, I entertained conversations that went nowhere just so that I would not feel the emptiness that came with sitting still. And mind you, during this time, I was unemployed. So I was actually now starting to feel the aftermath of not having that income that I was making prior to losing my job. And, for the first month or two, I was okay. I was able to budget and manage, right? But then I realized like it was a huge loss because that's stability. Prior to losing my job, I was making, anywhere between 14 and $1,600 a week. So imagine going from that to $509 a week, you know, $2,100 a month. Most of that is already gone towards rent. Then you have to pay for Wi-Fi, keep the lights on, and also feed yourself. And all that stress for me at that time, he was a welcome distraction, right? Because I didn't have to think about my next move. I mean, I did. I was constantly thinking about it but not the way that I should have been because he was also in a situation. So it's like, we were at a low point together. So it's really like trauma bonding. So they're being able to entertain conversations that went nowhere so that I wouldn't feel the emptiness, right? I realized that God doesn't compete with chaos. So with him, I knew off of the rip that, that was something that I shouldn't have been in, but I did it anyway because I didn't want to sit by myself. I didn't want to sit with myself. And I was at a low point as well, which created chaos. And I think the thing with God, right, is he'll sit back and let you exhaust yourself with distractions until you finally ask, why does this keep happening? And again, please make sure you guys check out my last episode. I talk about, no more the death of the nice girl, right? That awareness. Because once you have the awareness that something isn't right, you then have to, when you know better, you do better. Or there you're supposed to. And so for me, that is where the isolation begins. Not as a punishment, but as the detox, because I didn't get that message last year. It was this year that it became very apparent that the peace and the opportunity for growth that I was awarded when my ex walked away, I was ungrateful and unappreciative of it. So I was quickly trying to find something to fill that and replace that. And it put me in a worse off situation than what I was when I was by myself, right? Isolation is the withdrawal phase of your old identity. It is the space between who you were and who you are becoming. And baby, it hurts. It's uncomfortable, especially when you're so used to sitting in chaos. When chaos becomes your safe space, when conflict is comforting, right? Because at least you know what's coming next. You know you're not going to like it, but at least you know. It's predictable. That isolation creates a level of unsafety because you don't know what comes after that, right? You just know that you are in the process of becoming and you have to do it isolated. You have to go into hermit mode to be able to do that. Your body starts to crave the familiar. It craves the noise, the attention, and the chaos. But when what you are really craving is the version of yourself that you thought you had to be in order to deserve to be loved. And that's where God had to break in me. He needed to show me that peace isn't found in being chosen. It's found in choosing yourself. He needed to show me that silence is not abandonment. It is indeed protection. And he also needed to show me that solitude is not a setback. It's a setup. So when you're in isolation, your mind will literally lie to you. It will tell you that you're alone, but your spirit is whispering, you're being rebuilt. And I know so many people that are so afraid of being alone, right? The idea of loneliness and sitting by yourself. For me, I used to go about it the wrong way, right? After a breakup, I would isolate myself heavily in my house by myself. I wouldn't talk to anybody. I wouldn't do anything, which is not healthy, right? Because isolation doesn't mean complete and utter solitude. It means separating yourself and taking a step back from what you're familiar with, changing those patterns that at once. So I want to talk about the reset and what that looks like when you're afraid of isolation. So here's the part where science actually meets the spiritual. According to trauma expert like Dr. Basil von der Kolk, and this is the author of The Body Keeps a Score. I talk about this on my podcast and I've read it for myself. And Dr. Gaber Met. Our brains are wired to seek connection because connection once meant survival. When we experience rejection, isolation, the amygdala, which is the fear center of the brain, activates the same pain receptors as physical harm. So basically, separating yourself from those patterns, it feels, or it could be the equivalent on your brain as being punched or kicked by your partner. This is the reason why isolation hurts. This is the reason why a lot of people are afraid of it. This is why a lot of people stay in the same patterns. They stay in relationships that are not healthy for them. They betray themselves and tell themselves that they can make something work that they already intuitively know cannot and will not because it literally causes physical pain. And that's a hard thing to deal with, right? Staying stuck in those patterns seems like a walk in the park compared to breaking them. That's why it's called the road least traveled, because everybody could do what's easy. It's easy. Back in the day, they used to be like, oh, just stay with the man, do it for the kids. So everybody did it for the kids and raised a generation of broken people, traumatized people, because it was for the kids. But you can't build healthy on broken. You got to fix the broken first, right? This whole process of isolation, it's not weakness. It is biology. Y'all go ahead and pick up a book sometimes and read because this is scientifically backed, right? There's good news though. The brain is plastic, and because it's plastic, it has the ability to be rewired. Through mindfulness, self regulation, and gratitude practices, you can literally calm the overactive alarm system in your nervous system and reprogram it to associate solitude with safety and not danger. When you start to feel that, the first step is to breathe. Your breath is literally the bridge between your body and the soul. I remember, and I talked about this on one of my earlier episodes, when I broke up with my ex. We had 2-year relationship. And I remember feeling the physical effects of the breakup to the point where anytime I would think about him, I could feel in the back of my head this intercranial pressure that would give me migraines, right? The amygdala is back there. And the way that I described it was like a chemical dumping. I could feel the chemicals building up and releasing, and I would feel anxious and scared and fearful off of the thought of his name, the sound of his name. I remember one time, we were in no contact and I had went to the bank after work and, his work truck was parked across from the bank. And as I'm getting out, I just so happened to look across and I saw him sitting in the truck and my entire body just tensed up. And I felt like I was having a panic attack. I don't ever have those, but I felt it like I was going to pass out. I couldn't breathe. And, I was trying to stay grounded and leveled. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to walk. And at the time I had him blocked and he called me. He called my name and I almost lost it. And I felt this extreme level of anger and rage and hatred. And I ignored him. I kept walking and he called me again and something in me, right? It was like the old programming turned around and, he's like, hey, I'm going to text you later or whatever. And so I remember like trying to unblock him and it was just like an instantaneous response because I had been so hyper fixated and connected to this person. So I felt like, this goes back to the people pleasing, right? I was trying to find out, how to unblock him in my phone and the phone icon and the settings didn't pop up. Like this just sent me into an even more like fearful state of mind because now I'm like panicking and I'm anxious and all these stupid things at the time, which were necessary because I can talk about it now. And, he ended up texting me and he was like, oh, you blocked me. And I'm just like, duh, fucking obviously, my body was trying to detox him, but my mind still, he was imprinted in my mind. Right. And so like during this time, I would, drive around at work knowing that there was a possibility that I would see him. And so every single time I thought about that, I would go into an anxiety attack. And I had to train myself to breathe while I was driving. So I would do breath work, right? And so what that looks like is it's to be able to inhale deeply through your nose. You count for 4, you hold for 4, and you exhale through your mouth for 6. And then you reaffirm to yourself in that moment, I am safe in my body, right? And this is something that you have to continuously be able to do. This simple 4-4-6 pattern shows the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight system, and it activates your vagus nerve, which is the body's natural calm down button. And it definitely works. I promise you. It takes consistency and repetition, but it works. Step 2 is journaling the fear. You want to be able to ask yourself these questions like, what am I afraid will happen if I'm truly alone? What will happen? What does silence make me feel? And if you want to take it a step further, why does it make me feel afraid? What experiences have I had that have reinforced this fear of silence? What experiences have I not had that reinforce this fear of silence? What version of me am I afraid to meet? Right? That fear of the unknown is something. It really is. This is what keeps a lot of us in repetitive cycles, toxic cycles that we have to fight tooth over nail to get out of because it's repetition and familiarity. So once you're able to do all of this, then you have to remember this helps your prefrontal cortex, which is the rational brain, the part that's responsible for rationality and logic. It helps it to regain control from the emotional brain, right? Because the emotional brain is what causes impulsivity. The logic brain is the part that sits there and thinks objectively, this is what it is. This is how I can respond and react to it. Writing slows your thoughts and reframes them from threat to awareness. That is why I'm such an avid supporter of journaling. Step three, you want to be able to replace the script. So when your brain cannot tell the difference between what's real and what is repeated, that becomes an issue. So you want to be able to repeat the truth to yourself. You can use affirmations for isolation. And this could look something like, I'm not being punished, I'm being prepared. Solitude is my sanctuary. I no longer trace what distracts me from peace. This silence is where God speaks the loudest. I am safe, I am seen, and I am still. And these are affirmations that you can repeat every morning and night. Your subconscious is literally listening to everything when the world is quiet. Step four, create rituals that anchor you. So isolation literally becomes easier when you have structure. You want to be able to start your mornings with gratitude. Just list three things, or even if they're small. In the morning when I wake up, I've been listening to the high frequency guru. She has affirmation music on there. It's amazing. And it works. I know a bunch of people, like I've heard a bunch of reviews online before I actually went and subscribed to her online. I tried listening to her stuff overnight. I just couldn't. I would feel anxious for some reason. I don't know. You can do things like going for a walk without your phone. You can play worship or instrumental music while journaling, even lo-fi music, and then end your day with a self check-in. You can ask yourself things like, what did I learn about myself today? These are small anchors, and they can remind your nervous system that peace is predictable. It doesn't have to be earned. I always say you have to be able to give yourself what it is that you're seeking from others, right? If I can't give this to me, how dare I ask somebody to give it to me as well, right? That's lazy. That's expecting someone else to do the work for you. Sorry to say it, baby, but it's true. When you rest, your default mode network, the brain's self reflection system, activates. This is literally where the emotional processing, insight, and healing happens. This is why God slows you down, because your brain literally cannot process trauma and chaos. I'm going to repeat that again. Your brain is not able to process trauma and chaos. This is why so many people stay stuck in cycles for so long. This is why you can literally get into an argument with somebody over something that has severely injured you emotionally, and you take a step back, maybe for a few hours, and then the person hooks you back in, and you're right back in that cycle because you can't see it because you're too close to it. So stillness is where integration begins. If you're scared of isolation, I need you to understand this. You are not being erased. You are being rewired. Every moment that you are able to sit with yourself is a moment you are teaching your brain that peace is safety. So, in closing, if you are in isolation, an isolation season right now, I know that it feels lonely. I know that it feels like everyone else is moving on while you're still standing still. But what if standing still is your breakthrough? What if that's exactly what you needed to get to the next point of your life? Quantum leap, if you will. See, God was not able to elevate me when I was still entertaining the noise. He couldn't give me peace while I was still addicted to attention. And he couldn't pour new blessings into a vessel still leaking from old wounds. Isolation was never the punishment, it was the protection. It's where I learned that I don't have to chase what isn't meant for me. And I don't have to chase what's meant for me. What is meant for me will find me. I don't have to do all of the extras. And it is there where I stopped performing happiness and I started cultivating my own peace. So if you guys are listening to this right now, maybe God is calling you to do the same thing, to stop performing, to stop forcing, and just be. Just be. Because when you stop chasing validation, you then make room for revelation. And when you stop running from silence, you start hearing your own spirit. And when you stop begging for peace, you realize that it was always you. So Here's my prayer for you. May you find comfort in solitude. May your heart quiet enough to hear God's whisper. And may you finally realize that isolation is not the end of your story. It is the incubation of your purpose. Clock it. If this episode spoke to your soul, I need you guys to share it with someone who is in that silent season. Make sure you guys take a screenshot. I want you to tag me on Instagram and Threads. You can even do Facebook at Shaquem B on all socials. Make sure you guys leave a review and let me know what resonated most with you. Your feedback helps this message reach more hearts. And if you're ready to go deeper, make sure you guys go ahead and visit my website, shakemb.com, to book a one-on-one trauma-informed coaching sessions. I do offer a free one-on-one discovery call to all new clients just to see if we're a good fit for each other. Also, make sure you guys go to my website, shakemp.com, to download my interactive healing workbook. Join in on the next Healing Reset group experience. I do have my Patreon linked in my website as well. So if you're watching from YouTube, if you guys go over to Truth, Trust, and Trajectory podcast on YouTube, you can find my link in bio on my page. And don't forget, sis, peace is not the absence of people. It is the presence of purpose. And it starts with learning how to be still long enough to meet you. As always, this has been your girl, Shaquem B, and you've been listening to Truth, Trust, and Trajectory, where healing meets transformation. Until next time, King bye. For a lot of us, potential does not pay attention to your prayers. It actually distracts.
There is a way that appears to be right, but in the end it leads to death. Times the bravest thing you'll ever do is leave. Times the bravest thing you'll ever
drain me. The truth, when you heal, the people who